Hey, what's going on, fellow adjusters? Hope you guys are doing great this morning. I am back home, and I've been trying to actually shoot this video for a week now, but just was traveling back home, got back with the family I haven't seen in a few months, so been spending time with them. But this morning I'm up a little bit early. I'm actually at the RV storage that I gotta get some stuff out of the RV this morning, but just want to show you kind of the pretty day out here today. So a little crooked there. Nice brisk 50 degrees this morning. Feels really good. But anyways, I just want to take a couple minutes and talk about this video. Today we're talking about overhead and profit, what it is, when to apply it, and kind of the ongoing fight between carriers and contractors and public adjusters and attorneys on when it's supposed to be applied, and just kind of shed a little bit of light on there. First of all, if you guys have not downloaded the Xactimate white papers on O&P, overhead and profit, you should do that and read it. You can just get that online by Googling it. It's easy for anybody to access and download and have a copy of. And I've also seen on some of these websites that there's adjusters who say that they never consider white paper information in their adjustments. I mean, that is if that's your philosophy, that's your philosophy. I will say that legally speaking, it has weight, so you probably should be familiar with it. You should probably understand it. If you think about it, a good example on why it's important is, the idea of Xactimate including basic overhead and profit in the line items themselves for contractors that aren't general contractors is an excuse that a lot of carriers give for not including O&P on every single claim. They say, well, it's already included in the basic cost of the item. So they say if a job just needed a fence guy for whatever reason, right, just needed a fence guy, you want to give overhead and profit to the fence guy because it's already included in the line items. That's the argument that carriers use. And the reason they use that argument is because that's what Xactimate says. But if you flip that on its head, can you really use Xactimate as the guidelines for one situation when it benefits you and not for situations when it doesn't benefit you, right? So when it comes to overhead and profit, the actual overhead and profit, general contractor overhead and profit, can they say, well, we use Xactimate as our guidelines in this situation, but we're not going to use Xactimate as guidelines in this situation? That really doesn't hold up in arguments, right? Especially legal arguments, okay? So if you're going to use Xactimate guidelines, you have to use all of them, not just some of them, okay? You can't pick and choose what guidelines you're going to use. So for you adjusters out there say, I never considered the Xactimate white papers, I can say probably there's claims that you have that are being overturned and you don't know about, all right? And most of the time, adjusters who are making these blatant, statements don't really know if their arguments hold true long term, because the carriers never tell you if your decision was overturned in a court hearing or in settlement or in appraisal. You don't ever know that. You just make a decision and you just kind of stick to your guns, and it is what it is, and you don't like it, you can deal with it later. But I'm just saying is, there's probably situations where that decision's being overturned and you don't even know about it. And so you think you're right and you're not actually, because the carrier's not telling you when you're wrong. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, the white papers themselves still does not give it helps clarify, but it does not give a final, hey, you apply it every single time to this situation kind of thing. So there's still a lot of ambiguity to it. And we'll kind of talk, let's kind of dive into what overhead and general contractors overhead and profit, what it is and what it's not, okay? So if you read the white paper, and I'm not going to go through the white paper right now, you can go download that, and you should, and read it for yourself. But basically what overhead and profit, contractor overhead and profit includes is overhead that is not job specific, okay? So if I'm a general contractor and I have a decent sized business, I'll probably have an office. I'll probably have, some back end people that are doing paperwork. I have insurance for sure. I have trucks, most likely. I have equipment, especially mitigation. They have a ton of equipment, right? Well, all that is overhead, but it's not overhead to a specific job, okay? And what the white paper is saying is, yeah, we quote unquote include overhead and profit for trades, but we don't include overhead and profit for general contractors unless you add it into the claim in regards to things that aren't job specific, right? So I might have to use my truck 5 days during the specific job, and there's not a line item that says truck use, 5 days, right? There's not a line item. That's covered underneath general contractor overhead and profit. I might have to have my back office people send in a bill or an invoice to collect payment. On some of these jobs, it could be 3-4 times, depending on how fast or how often insurance is actually sending money. And there's not a line item that says, admin, service, 3 days or 12 hours or whatever it is, right? So general overhead and profit kind of is a blanket that covers that. What it does not cover is job specific overhead and profit, okay? So when someone says, well, the supervisor on a job is covered underneath overhead and profit, therefore we don't allow for supervision, that's actually wrong, according to the white papers. A supervisor is job specific, okay? And there are certain situations where even in residential, a supervisor is actually needed on site. Now, a lot of carriers will say, we don't cover supervision. Well, again, it's one of those things that, you may not cover it up front, but you're covering it on the back end when someone, takes it all the way to litigation or to appraisal or something like that. So a lot of times that is getting covered. They're just telling you we don't cover it, even though the reality is, if it's challenged, it gets covered. And I'm not sure if, I'm sure there's some kind of intentionality behind it. I don't know if there was a big meeting of the minds and they're saying, hey, these are the certain small items that we're not covering. Because remember, an estimate, for it to be an act of bad faith, right? So let's say supervisor, they say that, hey, we don't cover supervision. You say, well, that's bad faith if it gets covered in the back end, if it gets covered during litigation and stuff. And technically, I would agree with that, right? So if they're specifically saying something is not covered when it's warranted, that's bad faith. But remember, in the statutes, to have an act of bad faith, it has to be substantially less than the amount awarded, okay, than the recovered cost. So if you think about it, if you have a $25,000 claim and $500 worth of supervision, is the carrier really giving you substantially less than what you're due? No. Are they giving you less than what you're due? Yes. But is it substantially less? No. And that's what the statute specifically says, substantially less. So is there a, intentionality behind that? I'm not sure. There may be. They maybe say, hey, you know what? Really what it comes down to is when they tell you, hey, we don't cover this, what they're really saying is we don't cover this unless we're forced to. They will cover it if they're forced to. Okay? So that's just something that you need to understand. And, there's some carriers, I want to be honest. There's this idea that, all the carriers have gotten together and they make these, decisions and they're enforcing these decisions on their file reviewers. But I've also come to realize that there's some file reviewers that do this stuff on their own. I can include residential cleaning on some deployments and I can't include it on others for the same carrier. It all comes down to whoever's doing that file review, right? And so it's that kind of that decision that the file reviewers, hey, I'm going to make myself look good to this carrier by not including this in my estimate, or in our estimates to save them money. And we get a little pat on the back on that. And there's a lot of that goes on. We all, and I'm not throwing stones here, we all, in one way or the other, worship that almighty dollar, right? And God we trust. And it's, that's probably the truest thing that's on anything is that wording, God we trust, and the dollar, because that's the God that we trust the most. And I'm talking to myself here. I have anxieties when I feel like I don't have enough money, right? And it's terrible. You feel guilty about it, right? And I'm just going to take a side trip on that just because I think it's kind of important. So when we have this notion that the carriers are big and bad, or the contractors are big and bad, or the public adjusters are these big and bad people that just want money, they just worship that dollar, they'll do anything they can for that dollar. Well, shoot, we do too. A lot of us got into this industry for that dollar, right? And we need to, one thing that I've had to adjust, and again, just to kind of take this off topic is, is the real God you trust the dollar, or is it really in God you trust God? And having that confidence that no matter what, you can make the right decisions in life knowing that's all going to work out for good. That it doesn't have to be based on your decision. Your morality should not be based on your pay. I think that's the biggest thing. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. I try to do the right thing, and sometimes when money and the right thing collide, I have to make that conscious effort. Hey, I'm going to do the right thing. And there's not a lot of that goes on in any industry, especially this industry, because there's a lot of chasing on that dollar. We think that the dollar provides for us, and ultimately it's God that provides for us. So just wanted to kind of throw that in there. But anyways, after that little ramble, just make sure you're trusting the right God. That's what if you're trusting the right God, and you'll have a backbone where your wishbone is, or where other people's wishbone is. I think that was a great saying. Most people have a wishbone where their backbone needs to be. And you can't do that if you think that the dollar is what actually pays for you to live. So make sure you're trusting the right God there. Anyway, side note. So when do we apply overhead and profit? So we talked about, there's not a specific definition in the white papers. Basically, it's the general idea is whenever it's reasonably necessary that a general contractor will be used on a job, that's when we'll apply overhead and profit. But that's so generic. It used to be if you had 3 trades, we consider that reasonable enough to assume that a general contractor would be needed, and so you would apply overhead and profit. Now, today it's complexity. If there's scheduling involved, then trades can't work on top of each other. That's when a general contractor might be needed. I disagree with that assessment, and I've said that in some of my files specifically. And I think using the 3-4 trades is actually the best route. And again, you're going to have to, this is my personal opinion. There are going to be carriers who disagree. A lot of them are because they're trying to save that money. But the reason why I believe 3 trades is a good metric for it, think about this. Think about how busy you are in your life, okay? And you have this event that happens, and let's say you have, roofing, you have drywall, and you have paint that needs to be done to your house now because you had an event happen and, blew some shingles off the roof. It caused some water damage in the home, and now we gotta replace the roof. We gotta replace some insulation. We got to do some antimicrobial cleaning, and we got to do some painting, right? A lot of people say, well, that's not complex. Well, it really shouldn't matter, and here's why. You're a busy person, and this event happens, and all of a sudden, Now you have to start making phone calls to contractors trying to find people to come out and give you bids. And it's customary to find 3 contractors, okay? Do you really have time, if this was you, do you really have time to make 9 phone calls to find 3 contractors you're going to use? That's if you can get, that's just 9 phone calls to see if someone will show up. There's a lot of times you'll make 4 or 5 phone calls just to get 3 people to show up. So if you need 4 or 5 phone calls to get a roof, 3 roofers to show up to give you bids, 3 or 4 phone calls to get a drywall guy to come out there and give you bids, and 3 or 4 phone calls to get a painter to come out there and give you bids. Does that seem reasonable? Or would it be easier for you to call 3 general contractors and have 3 general contractors come out there and give you a bid? What is more likely, right? So that's how I apply it. And that's, you know what, if there's only 3 trades, I put it in and I make the file reviewer make me take it out. But I put it in there first. And the reason being is because it's reasonably likely if there's 3 trades, that person's not going to make 15 phone calls to try to find 3 people to do this job. It's more reasonable to make 3 or 4 phone calls to find 3 or 4 general contractors to give them a couple bids for them to decide on. Okay, so that's how I apply general overhead and profit. Okay. Now, the way that carriers are going about it now is complexity. They're saying is, well, if you got a painter and you got a drywall guy and you got a flooring guy, the flooring guy obviously can't work in there at the same time as a painter, so that's when you need a general contractor. And that's nonsense. I think it has to do with how inconvenient does the insured have to get in order to get this work done. Because our job is to restore the insured back to the financial state they were in prior to the storm, right? And so if they have to make 15 phone calls, they're doing the job of a GC. There's scheduling involved. I always thought that was stupid. Complexity is scheduling. Well, if I call one person, scheduling is involved because I'm scheduling that person to come out to my house when I'm available to do this work. Okay? Now complex that 3 or 4 times, and there's a reasonable argument, I think, for overhead and profit in that case. So anyways, I hope this video provided some clarity to it. Again, the general carrier idea is there has to be some complexity in scheduling. I think that's silly, but if you're working for a carrier right now, you may not have a choice but to apply that. I would still include it on 3 trades and make me take it out. That way I'm covered in the file. That simple. Make them make you take it out. But I think the 3 trades is actually the better route to go because it gives you, hey, we apply it every single time in this situation kind of thing. So anyways, if you have any comments on overhead and profit, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. Look forward to seeing, this is a hot topic, a big discussion. So look forward to seeing the comments, and we will talk to y'all later.